Today we're going to be doing intermediate. I'm going to show you traditional grip and I'm going to show you bend. This is Clayton Skinner. Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Beat. Hello. In this episode of Beyond the Beat, I'm going to teach you how to play triplet grooves. So the idea behind these grooves is simple. Before we were playing quarter notes, eighth notes, and 16th notes on the hi-hat. With these exercises, we're going to be playing triplets on the hi-hat. So this style of music would kind of favor more of a bluesy style, whereas we'll be playing triplets grooves or compounded grooves, and then later we'll be getting into shuffles following very similar patterns. So let's begin. Now before we get too far into this, I want to try to explain to you what a compounded time signature is. The time signature that we're going to be playing with today is called 12/8. So if you're familiar with time signatures or understand what a time signature is where the top number depicts the amount of notes and the bottom number is the type of notes that are going to be used. So for instance, 4/4 means that there are 4 quarter notes per bar. 4/4. In these exercises, we're going to be using 12/8. And 4/4. Explain that. Anyway, a compounded time signature is when the number of beats in the time signature doesn't necessarily depict how many beats are in the bar. So for instance, you look at a 12/8 time signature, there are not 12 beats in the bar. Exercise A will be your example of that. Exercise A, the entire bar is just a run of triplets. You have 4 sets of triplets. Now if you look at those triplets, you'll see that there is one line connecting them, which means that they're eighth note triplets. So that's where you get your eighth notes. If you count the amount of notes there are 12. There are not 12 beats in the bar, although there are 12 notes. If you look at the time signature on A, you'll see that it's 4/4. That means that there are 4 beats in this bar. And that's where a compounded time signature comes into play. It gets very complicated. I don't want to try to bore you, because obviously this is one of those situations where you technically don't need to use, or I technically didn't need to actually explain what a compounded time signature is, but it's good to know. And you never know. You might come across a situation where you need to know what a compounded time signature is. Anyways, I'm rambling. So let's get going. So as I stated before, A is just basically a full set of 4 triplets, or 4 sets of triplets, all being played on the hi-hat with your dominant hand, or your hi-hat hand. So anyway, if you're not familiar with the triplet, I suggest that you brush up on the concept behind it. Usually when you learn how to play triplet, you learn how to play it with 2 hands. In this case, you're only going to be playing with 1 hand. So the way that you count a triplet is 1 and a, 2 and a, 3 and a, 4 and a. And you're going to be playing that exact pattern on the hi-hat. Try and play it as you're playing it. Try and accent on all the quarter notes. So 1 and a, 2 and a, 3 and a, 4 and a. It'll really make those 4 beats in this bar stand out. Compounded. Now exercise B, we're just basically going to be adding snare to 2 and 4. So every time 2 and 4 comes around while you're counting, hit that snare. Simple as that. So now that you got the back beats done, let's get the down beats done. So in exercise C, we're going to be adding the bass drum to 1 and 3. So same thing. You're not going to be playing any left hand, so you can tuck that away. Every time you count 1 and 3 as you're going along and you're playing your triplets, hit that bass drum. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and Beat 1, we're going to be putting those last 2 together. You have the bass drum on 1 and 3, and the snare drum on 2 and 4. These beats though this particular episodes or these exercises are not going to be very difficult, especially if you've already done all the last beats. This will be quite simple to do. But regardless, I'll walk you through them all anyway. So remember, number 1, bass drum 1 and 3, snare drum 2 and 4. Just kind of follow along the patterns. Try to follow along with the groove as well. Remember, you want to make sure that every quarter note really sticks. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and simple. Beat 2, we're going to add some more bass drum. Now all these exercises are going to have bass drum on 1 and 3, and they're all going to have snare drum on 2 and 4. So I don't need to explain that to you. What's going to happen here is we're just going to be adding bass drums hits to different parts throughout the groove aside from 1 and 3. They're still going to be there. So for instance 2, we're adding it to the Av1 and the Av3. So now the groove kind of has a bass drum just before the snare hits. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and it's pretty simple. Beat 3, we're going to be adding bass drums to the and of 2 and the and of 4. So now the bass drum is going to be hitting directly after the 2 and the 4, directly after the snare drum. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Give it a try. Beat 4 is going to be 2 and 3 put together now. They're going to be spaced out. So the bass drum will be added to the A of 1 and then the and of 4. So there's going to be some gaps here, but shouldn't be a big deal. The bass drum is going to hit just before the first snare, and then there's going to be a bass drum hit right after the second snare hit, being 2 and then 4. So listen to the demonstration and give this one a try. Beat 5 is going to be everything. So there's going to be bass drum hits on the 1 and 3. There's going to be it on the Av 1, the and of 2, the Av 3, and the and of 4. So it's just basically going to be continuously playing constantly every other hit. If you're familiar with a polyrhythm, this just kind of follows what a polyrhythm would be. If you were playing quarter notes on your hi-hat, this would be what a polyrhythm would be. It's not really necessarily something that you need to concern yourself with. It's not really something that you need to understand to play this groove, but I'm just throwing it out there. Now, I do realize that these exercises are quite easy, and I wanted to try to fit as many of them as I could into this video without going too long, without going too boring. There is going to be a part 2 of this. But basically, blues music works a little bit differently than rock, and you can take this into account while you're practicing. You don't necessarily just need to practice the one beat and then memorize the beat. What you could do with this style of music is blues is very improvisational. It's very improv driven. With rock, you basically, when you select a beat for say your verse or your chorus or bridge or whatever, usually you would play the same beat. And your improvisation would just be improvising around that beat, just playing little things here and there around what you have structured. And blues music doesn't work that way. Blues music, you can play whatever you want. Obviously, you're going to want to try to match what everybody else is playing so that you keep the flow going. But you don't necessarily have to pick one beat and then go with it. So a good way to approach practicing these grooves is to be able to improvise around all of them. Take all the concepts of playing the bass drums either just before the snare drum or just after the snare drum, which is what this video is trying to help you do. Now try playing them again without, without having the bass drum on 1 and 3, and just adding the bass drums to like the ands of 1 and the as of 1s and the ands of 2, or the av 3 and the and of 4. Just try playing those. Just try to keep it as simple as you can, but try to really improvise how you play these beats. See how long you can do it by just constantly playing a different beat every bar, because that's what blues basically is. It's just constant improvisation. So I'm going to let you go. I'm kind of rambling again, so yeah. Well, that's all for this episode. Make sure you check out part 2 of Triplet Groove Exercises. We'll give it a little bit deeper into the subject, and I'll have a little bit more exercises for you. So I'll see you there.